So first off, welcome. This is a private event. This is only for active students. This is not open to the general public. This is intended to give you, the active student, some training tips, some feedback, suggestions, and put some framework around what you're doing, what you're practicing to help you maximize your training time. So I'm Brent Earlywine. I'm the founder of the Combat Shillelagh system. So for those of you that are newer to the system, my background is I've spent about 35 years in dedicated martial arts study. I developed and put together the Combat Shillelagh curriculum starting a little over 4 years plus ago. So my entire martial art career, so to speak, has all been around staff weapons, edge weapons. I've also done a bunch with modern day combatives, firearms. I'm a certified NRA instructor. I'm a certified combat hunter, left of bang program instructor. ALICE, which is the active shooter methodology program. I'm certified in that. Plus, I hold very high level black belts in several arts. One of the arts that I've done for the last 25 years of the 35 years, I'm actually a 10th degree black belt Dai Shihan, and I have a full-time school here in Pittsburgh that I teach that as well, along with the Combat Shillelagh. So a rich history, and ultimately this was designed to put together and maximize the use of what I think is an awesome weapon, which is the Shillelagh. I've got family and multiple generations that hail from Ireland, so this just seemed to be a natural fit for me as a next step in development to put together the program. So there's certainly more to come versus what is public today. I teach classes 3 days a week here in Pittsburgh. We do live seminars. Of course, once the COVID stuff is done, we were supposed to have another one back in April, and of course, all that got postponed. So stay tuned as that starts to open back up. I am doing live classes again, but the open seminars, I think we're going to have to hold off for another couple of months until everything starts to calm down. So stay tuned. That will be coming here very shortly as well. So let me just get to the agenda. So depending on when you entered the system, you've seen these training tip emails that have been coming from me. And those are designed to, again, just give you some feedback, give you some suggestions, give you things to focus on, pay attention to as you advance through the curriculum. And I thought it made sense to take a whole bunch of them that I thought were really important and put them together in this webinar format. So we're going to go through really kind of 10 discussion points this evening. This will all be recorded, so you guys will have a copy of it once it's done and posted. You can keep in your own files, but that's designed to assist you as the active student. So we'll go through how to train with this, rank testing, training safely, setting up your training area, really the cores of the 9-gate system that's at the basis of our system in general. Unique properties of the Shillelagh. We'll talk about taking, owning, cover, and control in the center line, striking ranges. Those two subject matters are actually really deep, so this will be a introduction for everybody on what those are. We'll talk about the buddy system and having training partners, and then of course we'll talk about the difference between drills, slow practice, and then free training, and what that looks like and why. So if we get started, I really wanted to do a couple of things. So one, not just a welcome, but a thank you to all of our students. So we've got students now literally starting to show up all over the world. So we've got here in the States, Pennsylvania, Virginia, New York, North Carolina, Florida, Massachusetts, Texas, Michigan, Georgia, and counting. And then we've got students and groups in Australia, in Russia, as well as, of course, in Ireland, and continuing to grow. So just a hearty thank you from me personally for people that are entering the system and starting to participate with us. It's very, very exciting. Then, of course, I've got, certified instructors, master instructors here in Pittsburgh, where we all started several years ago. If we look at the model, it was designed really as a blended learning model. And what I mean by that is we do live classes, live seminars here, as well as an option to be hosted in somebody else's site if they wanted to set that up and bring us into town. And then, of course, we set up the remote streaming video for people that were remote students. And this is why we've started to see people literally all over the United States, as well as other countries, starting to enter and practice in our system. So this is designed from the ground up to support a remote learning and blended learning model. We certainly want to see you live at some point during your training, and we'll go through when we talk about ranking and ranking opportunities. what that can and should look like. But we wanted to make sure that the vast majority of the system was available to most people around the world. And not for nothing, but we invested an awful lot of time, money, and effort to put together a system to deliver that content for you as well. So hopefully you guys are finding that to be a good system for you and it's working. If not, send me a note, call me, text me, what have you. More than happy to jump on a call, have a conversation with you, and talk through any challenges you might have. The other thing that I would say here is that I'm starting to see these regional training groups springing up. I just had a discussion again with somebody that joined in Virginia specifically to create a training group. The one gentleman that's in Russia also wants to be on the training path. I think he's on the call this evening as well. So that is an option if you want to set up a training group. That's a slightly different dynamic, but certainly welcome, and we're open to it and encourage it. So if you have a couple of buddies that want to train with you and do the art at the same time, that actually not only helps you with the training, sooner or later becomes a requirement in the training that you have a training partner, but it certainly makes it a lot more fun when you have a bunch of people training with you. I know that I love having a large class and a bunch of people at a seminar, really just kind of rocking and rolling. And then longer term, I also have calls out for instructors. So as students around the country and around the globe advanced through the ranks, I really would like to see a small cadre of folks interested in going to certified instructor and master level in the system as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, let me know. And again, we'll have the conversation on what those requirements look like and how we can put you on that path. So if we look at the ranking structure, rank testing, how this kind of all works. So first off, the chart on the right-hand side of the slide, these are all the levels. So what most people have been exposed to so far and have access to is the top line, which is level 1, level 2, level 3. Another way that we have it codified is green belt, brown belt, black belt. But we also have completely mapped out the system and codified assistant instructor, full certified instructor, master level as well, with all the curriculum requirements. Typically, those levels are absolutely 100% face-to-face, are going to require an awful lot of live interaction to get you through those levels, but they are available, they are codified, and they certainly are put together. I've got several certified instructors here in my backyard that have been with me for years and years. If you look at what's required to rank in the system, the simple one, quite frankly, is every year you have to have an active student federation membership. If you enter the system with the black belt bundle, that's actually included. We tried to make it easy for you. If you buy a la carte, kind of buy as you go, green belt level, brown belt level, black belt level, that is not included, and you have to source that separately. You can't be considered for rank unless you have an active membership, and then that renews at the beginning of every year. From a testing perspective, to actually test for rank, so level 1 and level 2, green belt and brown belt, I'd prefer to see you live, but I know if you're multiple states away, that may not be easy or practical, and certainly if you're overseas in another country, that may be very difficult. We make available that you can actually put together a video test. So we have a rank test sheet. All the requirements are very clearly in the student manual on what's required to meet those rank requirements. You can do it a couple of ways. You can either do some sort of setup where you contact us and set up a live video and do it live with us remotely. Or the other way that's probably a little easier is you can film yourself or video yourself going through all the requirements and the techniques, and then send that to us for review along with your testing fee. And then myself and the other senior instructors will review it, give you feedback, let you know whether you passed or not, and then we can have that conversation. What's important to note is if you're going to do the remote video testing where you film yourself, look, it doesn't need to be a Hollywood movie. I don't need you to try to teach me back what the techniques are. I just need you to go through the techniques, film it from a couple of different angles for each one so we can see it properly. That just gives us an opportunity to review it accurately and then give you some solid feedback. What you'll get back from us, whether you pass, whether you don't pass, will be a pretty solid document with some real feedback on strengths, weaknesses, things you might need to work on. So even if you do pass, there may be some things that we want you to go back and dive in a little bit deeper or try to fix or clarify as you move forward. The other thing that's an offer all through your journey at whatever point you're at is you certainly could film yourself at any point, not as a test, but just really to gather some feedback, send it to us as a touch point. Or if you wanted to set up some sort of live conversation, we can certainly have that as well. So that's is a standing offer and certainly available to you at any point, not for ranking or testing, but just really, how am I doing? What do I need to work on? What does this look like? The easiest way to do that is just film yourself, video yourself, send it to us, and then again, we'll give you some solid feedback on what the heck that looks like. If you look at level 3 as a black belt, that's going to be in person only. So somebody's going to have to invest some time, effort, and do that one of a couple of ways. You can either come to one of our seminars or live classes here in Pittsburgh. Preferably, you're going to need to coordinate that ahead of time on what the schedule looks like. Or you have an option if you wanted to host us maybe for a weekend seminar in your local city or state, and we do training and then do testing at the end of it. That's a really popular option. But I do need to see you live for the black belt test. I can't do that on a video only. I just, I need to make sure that your body's moving properly, you understand the material properly at a high level. So I need to see you live at some point for the black belt level. And same thing for assistant instructor, and obviously master levels. So just wanted you to understand what that mapping looks like, what the options are. And again, if that generates any questions along the way, you can certainly reach out to us, send us an email, send us a text, communicate on Facebook, communicate on Instagram, lots of channels on how to get to myself and my senior instructors. All right, so let's talk about training safely. I want to make sure that you're safe. So look, getting hit with a shillelagh is not a pleasant experience. It can and will shatter bones, break bones, break the skin. We're doing joint locks, throws, takedowns, all kinds of fun stuff. You can create and cause an awful lot of damage. So I want to make sure that you're training safely. And there's several tenets on how to do that. The biggest one that we'll start with is really just having a training version of the shillelagh. So one, it's awesome to have a authentic shillelagh. You can beat the crap out of them. They're well made, especially if you source the ones through Ireland like we do. You can buy them from a lot of different stick manufacturers or makers. There's some folks in the United States that make some beautiful sticks, but the traditional ones are certainly going to come directly from Ireland. We source ours from the village of Shillelagh, from a multi-generational family that's been doing this literally for decades and decades and decades. Handmade in the traditional manner, and they each one takes upwards of 2 years plus, start to finish, before it's a finished product, and then you can source it. And Dennis and Liam, Dennis is the son, Liam's the father right now. The ones they make, there's a traditional shillelagh, which is the high gloss version you kind of see on the right of this image, and then they also make a quote unquote fighting stick version, which is really just a different finish. It's kind of a matte glaze on it, if you will, which holds up really well to strikes, and cleans up really well. The high gloss sometimes can chip on you if you're doing stick to stick stuff, but they still really hold up well. And then the material is obviously Blackthorn, which has got just enough flexibility to it with stiffness and strength. It's really kind of an amazing wood from a stick fighting perspective. So they're worth the investment to buy one, whether you source it through us or source it through somebody else. If you want to understand a trusted source, ask us. We'll steer you in the right direction and or give you feedback. But you want to make a training version of that. So we put a video together on how to make a training version, same size and shape. It's basically hardwood shaft, tennis ball on the end, some hockey duct tape. Doesn't cost you a lot of money. You'll probably break it sooner or later, because even a good solid hardwood probably will not be as strong as Blackthorn, but it certainly is a prerequisite for safe training. So highly recommend it. The other thing you want to think about is protective gear. So if you're starting to do strikes against another person or receive strikes against yourself, you want to have some sort of helmet. Hockey helmet works really well. You don't have to spend a ton of money. You might be able to find them used. Hockey gloves, lacrosse gloves, those are good options. And then, of course, since we actually attack joints, anywhere the bone is close to the surface, like elbows, knees, shins, collarbone, obviously multiple places on the skull, you want to keep those covered and padded. So elbow pads, shin pads, knee pads. And again, you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money, but make sure it's a decent, thick, quality product. watch eBay, watch your local garage sales. If you play other sports, maybe you can repurpose some of that equipment. Also, probably recommend, but not required, but you could do a chest pad protector as well. So if you want to spend a bunch of money, you can go do that. But I myself, I've gone out and just bought a bunch of used stuff that I've used over the years. And then that ends up being great material to keep and use for yourself, as well as any of the training partners you may train with. The other thing I want to call out here is, as you're doing these practices, we have what we call a defect on purpose in our training, and that defect is speed. And here's what I mean by that. So, well, we can always go faster, we can always go full speed, but ultimately, if you're going to understand the core roots and principles and the concepts inside of whatever you're doing, the best way to understand it is to practice it at a slower speed. Do it properly, proper targeting, proper distancing, actually strike the other person or strike the other stick, or whatever the case may be, and whatever you're practicing, but do it slowly so you can do it properly into the proper targets, even without pads, as long as you go slow. What you're going to find is emotionally, if you're actually in an altercation, in a fight, you're going to speed up anyways. So you don't want to start with training fast. You have to train slow. And then you can always add speed later to get closer to realistic training and live speed kind of action. But you'll never get there. You'll just instill bad habits if you don't train slow. So I can't emphasize that enough. Do it all, do it properly, but do it at about half speed to even 1/4 speed of whatever normal would be. Your training is going to end up being so much better, and you'll have better movement and better understanding if you do that. The other thing that I want to call out here is ground skills. So in level excuse me, level 1, level 2. Level 3, you start to see joint locks, takedowns, throws. At the higher level, we call them stanzas, which is this collar and elbow kind of, I hate to use the term jujitsu, but that concept of throwing people to the ground. You have to be able to receive that safely, and the way you receive that safety is by having ground skills or understanding how to go to the ground in a safe manner. So there are some specific roles that we call out in our curriculum that you need to practice. So want to make sure that you understand what those roles look like, and you take them seriously and you do them. There's lots of examples, unfortunately, where people will get damaged pretty significantly just by simply going to the ground in an incorrect manner. There is a proper way to do it and a safe way to do it, and I need to make sure that you guys and gals practice that. Again, any questions there, you guys can certainly ask, reach out to us, let us know. Happy to explain further if the videos and the manual and the material don't make sense to you. So that'll take us to the training area. So this may seem simple and basic, but there's a mentality and a physicality to making sure you set up a specific training area. So let's just start with, highly recommend a dedicated training space. So this could be your garage, this could be your living room, this could be your backyard, your patio, your driveway. Doesn't matter, right? But the point is, try to have some sort of dedicated space that you can set aside, that you can then set up for training and use all the time. One, make sure that you're investing the time to train regularly, so you're consistent with it. That's certainly going to be a requirement to understand the material, advance, keep on moving. If you don't do it enough, you won't advance. You'll forget stuff. If you do it too often, you might get burned out. So there is a happy kind of balance there between too much training and too little training. But having a dedicated space certainly helps. If you're going to have a training group, you may end up doing something like a basement at the church or the local community center, or, I've got I've got a full-time school. I've got, 1,500 square feet. And, I've had dedicated permanent space that I lease now almost 20 years counting for my full-time school that I teach both the Japanese style as well as Combat Shillelagh. And now you can go that route if you want to, but that's a pretty significant investment. But, like I said, garage, backyard, living room, spare bedroom, what have you, dedicated space. The other thing you want to make sure in the dedicated space is it's clear of dangerous items, right? So that could be anything. You want to make sure you don't have pocket knives in your pocket. You're not carrying a firearm if you do concealed carry. You don't have pens. You take off your jewelry. You have training clothes, right? So for us, we're not sticklers about having any sort of, gi or karate uniform. Recommend loose-fitting pants, t-shirt, more than fine. But just make sure that you're safe in that space. And if it's dedicated, it's easier to control and keep it that way and keep it safe. If it's something that's a spot that you use for other purposes, you may accidentally introduce things that are dangerous again. Think about from a ground perspective. Is it even ground? Is it a padded floor? Has it got rocks and sticks? Or you got stuff in your garage that paint or chemicals or whatever the case may be that could introduce some level of risk as you start moving around and rocking and rolling with sticks, blades, and other people. So you want to try to have that space be as safe as possible, because I want you to be safe as possible. The other thing that I like to see is, we talk about the 9 gates, but just from a training area perspective, I want to see you tape this grid on the floor. It seems simple, but I got to tell you, over the years, I've used this so many times for myself in my own training, as well as for my students. In all of my training and all of my martial arts, the 9 gates are fairly universal angles to deeply understand, and just having them taped on the floor like I have here in the image will go a long way to reinforcing the actual angles that you go through. Look, human beings only move so many ways. So that's why I say this 9 gate concept, or these 9 angles, really apply to almost anything that you might do from a martial arts perspective. So it's a phenomenal piece to understand. If you count the lines, you're going to count 8 and go, okay, how did you end up with number 9? Number 9 is really that center where everything comes together. And I'll show you on another diagram. We certainly talk about it in our training material. But tape it on the floor. You won't regret it. You'll use it all the time. Trust me. And the last piece here on the dedicated training area, look, if you're not with me, you're not in a training hall, you're not in a dojo of any kind, but there's a concept from a mentality perspective that I really want you to integrate and leverage, which is treat the area with respect. It's your training area. It's where you are trying to learn. You're taking it seriously. You're dedicating time to it. You're taking care of yourself. You're taking care of others that might be training partners. There is a semblance and a concept of being safe, keeping an open attitude. You're going to learn no matter what the experience is, good or bad. You're going to learn a lesson. It's just a mentality that I really want you to take to heart and treat it like a training hall or a training area. Again, even if it's just a corner of your garage, treat it with the respect it deserves and the seriousness that it deserves as you train through the system. All right, so let's shift to the 9 gates. This is one of the really, really deep subjects. So first off, this is a root and core of our system, root and core of a lot of martial arts systems, quite frankly, even though they may not call it out. It's definitely buried. And once you see it here, if you look at anything or you train in other arts or even do YouTube videos, you're going to see these concepts all over the place. If you think of these 9 angles, and I'll actually just let me get to my drawing tool. Right here in the middle. Actually, I should probably change the color. Let's make it undo color red. Number 9 is right here in the middle. So you'll see the 9 angles, 9 cuts, 9 strikes, 9 defenses, the blocks against each. And then also the footwork follows these patterns. So this same 9 gate pattern in the air in front of you is how you're striking, how you're blocking. And then it's also, if you take the same 9 gates and put them on the floor, then they end up being the same angles for your footwork, for distancing, and safety. And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. So really critical you understand these 9. If you look at the angles, can there be additional angles that are shallower in between the way the lines are? Absolutely. You can slice and dice that literally to infinity. But it ends up being the same quote unquote angle between point A and point B. So I want to make sure that you understand that. I get that question a bunch. It's like, okay, well, you got 9, but could I have 30? Could I have 3,000? Could I have 3 million? The answer is yeah, of course. All you're doing though is just drawing a shallower version of the same angle. Um, so it applies to our striking. I have them numbered. So you're going to learn them in a specific pattern. The blocks are going to be in a specific pattern in response to the strike. And then the footwork I don't have numbered, but it's the same kind of angles. And then the fun stuff starts to really show up once you've absorb this and really practice it as it's written and as it's shown to you in the videos when you start to mix and match, right? So instead of doing number one, number two, number three, number four, now it's number one, number four, or number seven, number two, right? You start mixing and matching kind of in the moment. And then you also add the layer of the footwork and moving to those angles as well. So it gets really complex really fast, but that's where the fun stuff is. And to somebody that hasn't trained in this kind of structured environment, it's going to be very confusing and hard for them to keep up, which means you win, they lose. So I can't emphasize enough the whole 9 gates concept: strikes, blocks, so attacks, defense, as well as footwork and body movement to get offline. And that's one of the first things you start in level 1. Get off the X is what I call it. Where you're effectively just moving back 45 degrees to one direction, either back left, back right. Really, really simple way to start to understand the angles from a footwork perspective. All right, so let me clear off that. All right, so let's talk about the shillelagh itself. This is actually one of the reasons that I got super interested in the shillelagh. I've always loved staff weapons. I've always loved bladed weapons. I told you I've been training for 35 years and counting. It was more than 4 years ago I started to train with the shillelagh, but I codified the system 4 years plus ago. But I did it because of what the shillelagh brings to the table. Very different than just a normal quote unquote 3-foot stick. So if you look in other arts, Japanese, Filipino, Korean, you name it, from around the world, almost everybody has a staff weapon of some kind or multiple staff weapons. So you'll see 6-foot staffs, 8-foot staffs. Some of the Chinese systems, you actually can see 12-foot, 14-foot staffs, which is kind of crazy, all the way down to 12-inch, 16-inch, 18-inch, 20-inch short staffs or cudgels, and everything in between. So our system, I actually have it mapped. So the traditional shillelagh for a modern day person is probably about 36 inches. There's no universal standard. If you do research on the web, you're not going to find a shillelagh is this and only this. You're going to find descriptions and lengths all over the place. The other thing is they're a natural product, right? So this isn't a piece of plastic. It's a live piece of plant that was cut, blackthorn, cured, put together. And these things, when we buy them from Dennis and Liam in Ireland, they're anywhere from 32 inches to 38 or 39 inches. I usually buy for myself, I'm 6'1", just for reference. So I usually buy mine at about 36 or 37 inches long. Seems to be about the right fit for my body size. Depending on how tall you are, you may pick something shorter or even longer, quite frankly. I've seen descriptions of shillelaghs upwards of 48 inches. Just like I said, there's no agreed to definition of an actual length. It's really more what's going to fit your body type. The other thing to keep in mind is it's got a specific shape, right? So the knob end, what makes it a shillelagh, it's got a curvature to it. It's got a shape. It's got specific weight. Whether you get them lead loaded like I do, or you don't, it's still going to be heavier at that end versus the rest of the shaft, just because of the extra wood on the knob. Highly recommend, if you're going to buy one, whether it's from us or from somebody else, get them lead loaded. That really just magnifies the impact, makes it really, really powerful, and a little kind of crazy on the maximizing the force when you actually strike something with it. Plus, that's going to be a little closer to fighting sticks. And then if you get a quote unquote version that's called a fighting stick, usually the heads will be a lot bigger. You've seen some of the photos we've posted where the fighting stick is almost twice as large or even bigger than a quote unquote traditional shillelagh, for the simple reason that it's really meant to be a blunt force instrument and crack somebody's skull or break an arm or break a leg or what have you. So the curvature, the shape, really important to understand. It makes it different than a straight shafted weapon from any other system. The other thing that is kind of fun in some of our higher levels, level 2, level 3, we actually use that shape for disarms, weapon clearing. So we treat it almost like a hook that will capture somebody else's weapon, and then we can use that energy to take it offline, disarm, or just shift the attack away from us, if you will. The other end is the ferrule end. So usually that's going to come to some sort of point. Maybe it's going to have a metal cap on it. Most of the ones that we buy and train with will have a metal cap. I've seen versions where there's actually some sort of spiked end to it, which makes for some really interesting kind of nasty strikes and thrusts with the ferrule end of the shillelagh. So blunt force knob end, and then maybe a metal sharp stab end, if you will, or ferrule end. It's got some really interesting combos, and you can use both ends interchangeably for different types of applications. And you'll see that in the training material in some of our strike types that we show you. And then the other thing that's kind of fun is, because it's blackthorn, the shaft is it's usually sanded down or smoother, but it's still got all these kind of lumps and knobs and kind of natural pieces to it, which is interesting. When you do some of the chokes like we do with the shillelagh, you can use that to cause additional damage or pain compliance, or what have you, as you're rubbing those knobs against somebody else's body parts where bone might be close to the surface. It can actually cause an awful lot of pain and reactions to create some space to move in. So that's got some fun aspects to it as well that you don't get with a straight shaft weapon and some of the other martial arts. So just a lot of fun stuff in the shillelagh specifically. That's what attracted me to it. And then, of course, we utilize all those unique aspects in our training and fighting system to the utmost, and take full advantage of all the unique properties of the shillelagh. The other thing I'd call out here real quick before I move on is in our system, as well as in some of the traditional Irish stick fighting, you'll also hear about cudgels. And cudgels are the shorter sticks. You can just think of a shorter version of a shillelagh, and you'll see them probably in about 3 size ranges: about 16 inches, about 18 inches, and about 20 inches. Of course, again, no set size. That could vary pretty dramatically depending on where you bought them from or who you ask. But I think those are 3 really solid sizes. Those are the sizes specifically we train with. So as you get to assistant instructor level and instructor level, we do double stick fighting. And that is typically going to be with a long shillelagh or a long bata, and then a short cudgel in combinations. And then ultimately it's also 2 cudgels separately. So short stick, and then those all are analogs that stand in for eventually at master level transposing that to blade work. So the cudgel is a really good analog that eventually will shift to understanding how to use that as a dirk or a personal blade. That's pretty common in some of the Irish systems, as well as other systems around the world. So really fun stuff as you look at the cudgel. The other thing that you might see or hear is what's known as a wattle. And these are typically going to be longer staff weapons. They may not have the knob at the end. This might actually be closer to like a longer walking staff. So you'll see those anywhere from 48 inches to 72 inches. And it's a generic term, but really it's a longer walking staff. So we have at our instructor level and master level, we have the wattle at a 6 foot length, and then also at about a 48-inch length, so about 4 feet and some change potentially. So very specific techniques with longer staffs that we add as layers to our system as you advance in the ranks. So there's a lot of fun stuff ahead of you as you get through level 1, level 2, level 3, as you move into level 4, level 5, level 6, as we add some of the other lengths and applications of those weapons. All right. So another deep subject, talking about the center line. This is something that is probably going to take you a while to master. Never really goes away. as a concept. It becomes critical as you shift to any armed martial art, whether it's ours or somebody else's. Shows up a lot in blade arts, by the way, specifically, excuse me, if you're doing sword arts or short blade arts. But for us, from a staff art concept, is the center line. So my center line and my opponent's center line. So here are a couple things of what I mean by that. Ideally, what I want to do to protect myself is I want to keep the weapon on my center line, so it's between me and the opponent at all times. Even when I'm moving, even when I'm striking, even when I'm blocking, I want to put that between me and the opponent. So he has to get through the weapon to get to me. Is probably the easiest way to describe it. So a lot of times what I'll see is when people first start training, they're doing strikes and blocks, but the weapon is out, on the side of their body somewhere, and their center line is completely open, which is just going to do nothing but invite some sort of attack to you, or even a counter attack in the middle of a defense. So critically important to try to keep your center line covered. And if you need to, you can move your feet to move your body to shift your center line, so you're always behind the staff or the bata or the stick at all times. That's a kind of a deep subject all by itself, but it is part and parcel. So when you go look at the videos and the different levels, you should see us covering the center line pretty consistently. And then if I want to win the fight, right, I want to take the other person's center line. So that concept has got two sides to the same coin. I want to protect mine while taking or exposing or taking full advantage of the other guy's center line. So I'm going to either, knock the weapon off their center line. I'm going to move to an angle where I can reach their center line because they don't have it covered. I'm going to strike or attack while they're moving and they don't have it covered while they're in transition from one position to another. So covering my center line while taking full advantage of and attacking through their center line is a critical component. And you got to realize that it's not static, right? Everybody's moving. The weapons are moving. They're moving. I'm moving. So again, you get all these layers that start to get complex really quickly. But if you keep that concept always in the forefront of your head, cover mine, take full advantage of his, you're going to get so much further, so much faster. And then you'll see all these magical opportunities will just start to show up. I call them Christmas gifts. So it's, when I'm training with somebody and we're doing free training, almost every single time I can end up winning when I'm just paying attention to how to take advantage when they have not covered their own center line. Or I end up in a really safe place when I just keep mine covered. So worst case, if I do everything else wrong, if I keep my center line covered, I'm probably still in pretty good shape. So like I said, two sides to the same coin. Really important. All right, so let's go to striking ranges, hand positions, another really deep subject, but you can really think of this as I want to create and destroy distance between myself and the opponent. So distance equals safety for me because distance also equals time. And what I mean by that is to be able to reach me, they got to cover more ground. And if they got to cover more ground, it takes them longer, right? So even if it's an extra foot, it's still an additional amount of time, or it's an additional layer of safety and protection because they can't necessarily reach me. So I'm out of reach of their arms. I'm out of reach of the actual extension of the weapon, whether it's a long bata or a cudgel or whatever the case may be. Distance equals safety. It's a really good core concept to keep in mind. So I can create or destroy that distance with my footwork. I can also create or destroy that distance by hand positions on the actual shillelagh. So there's a normal grip, kind of a third, and a third, but I can manipulate my hand positions forward to choke up on it, or even out to the end to extend the shillelagh. And doing that all in motion creates some really interesting additional ranges: long range, medium range, short range. So just the manipulation on hand positions on the shillelagh shillelagh can dramatically change, lengthen or shorten the distance between me and the opponent. It also creates some interesting kind of confusion on their part if they think you're gripping it in a traditional fashion and then you've decided to choke up on it and then use it as a short range weapon, even though physically it's a long weapon. They think you're going to do X and you end up doing Y. So it creates some openings and some different types of attacks that wouldn't be available to you if you kept kind of a static hold on the weapon. And then in combination with moving your feet, the angles as well, right? So back 45, forward 45, off to the side, linear fashion, you name it. When you add all these 9-gate distances and angles on the floor with your footwork on top of manipulating the weapon or your hand position on the weapon at the same time can create really a huge number of combinations that are difficult for the other person to absorb, process, and then figure out how to deal with. And then if we talk about long arc, short arc, there's different strike types. So in level 3, I'm pretty sure that's the level it's in, you'll see these long arc strikes and then short arc strikes with the shillelagh. And then eventually in level 4, you'll see that with the cudgels, as we're doing the 2-stick fighting system or piece of the system. That's what directly translates to blade work. So I actually have a video that I want to show real quick. I think it's 2 or 3 minutes. Maybe it's 2 minutes. It's really short. It was from one of our last seminars before the COVID shutdown, and it shows you where I'm doing the long shillelagh, as well as, instead of a cudgel, I actually have a blade in my hand. Don't worry about the blade shape or type. It's just one of my aluminum trainers I've got in my school. But the concepts show you that 2 things: long arc strikes, short arc strikes, and then specifically how they translate to cutting instead of just striking blunt with a staff. So let me show you that.
Let me know when you're ready. Good. All right, cool. So long and short. So this time we'll mix and we'll do the cudgel will now become a blade of some kind, like a dirk or a dagger, whatever. I just happen to use this as a trainer. So we'll do a long strike and then we're doing a short cut. Long strike, short cut. So out. Out. Switch. So, out, out. Or, actually, you grab a, whatever. Doesn't matter. Go slow. Nickel 1. Yep. So if I do a short, long, I'm going to take away his ability to hold the short, long, here and here. The first time I did it was long, short, or long, short. Make sense? Inside, outside, and you can decide what you want to do first. Long one first, long one second. Doesn't matter.
All right, so that's just a brief taste of what I'm trying to share as far as a concept. Like I said, it shows up in the instructor levels, 2-stick fighting, and then eventually we translate to actual blades, stick and blade, and then blade and blade. What's interesting to note here is that, excuse me, if you look at the history of stick fighting in Ireland, there's some pretty good arguments to be made that ultimately the sticks were being utilized as an analog for sword play and short blade play, like dirks and daggers, because they were being outlawed and common people weren't allowed to carry them or wear them. Ultimately, I think, all by itself, stick fighting just with sticks is certainly valid in its own right and just amazing and a lot of fun and a blast. And there's all these dynamics and aspects to it. But it's important to think about that these could very well and are analogs for moving to blades, which is what we've got later on in our system. So just wanted to share that with you. I thought you guys might find that kind of interesting. All right, this is a short conversation, but look, sooner or later, you're going to need a training partner. At level 2 and level 3, we start doing the stanzas. These are the person-on-person type of applications. They're the joint locks, they're the throws, and there are specific stanza material that you need to go through. Very difficult to try to do that on your own. So sooner or later, you are probably going to need a training buddy. So start thinking about that now. We put together a bundle as an offer. two people want to buy in at the same time, they can certainly do that. Try to do it at a discounted rate. If somebody wants to set up a training group, I don't have a formal bundle for that or a formal price for that. We can certainly talk about what that might look like. So just need you to start thinking about having a training partner if you don't have one already. And then sooner or later, make sure that that's how you get through the material is person on person. And there's an understanding as an attacker and a defender. So the both sides of that same coin, there's skill sets that both people will need to understand. And there's a lot of rich material there that I don't want you to gloss over, skip, or try to go through too quickly. There's a ton of stuff I want you to understand. There's some really kind of magical stuff in the collar and elbow type of material. And I say that it comes alive. This is where you start to see it turn into real, right? So if somebody's really trying to knock your block off with a stick or a shillelagh, suddenly it becomes really important that you understand how to defend against that or do proper blocking or disarms or takedowns or throws or what have you. And it really only comes alive when you have somebody that's delivering a realistic attack. And then remember, our defect is speed. So go slow, do it properly, but do it slow so everybody's safe. All right. And then this should be probably the last slide. Keep us on time. I get a ton of questions about this, both from active students, and not for nothing, I get a lot of trolls on the internet too that are like, "Oh yeah, that was a great video, but show me full speed." And my feedback here is for you, the active student. This is what I care about. You gotta drill and crawl before you walk before you run. So you've got to do the material properly in a slow fashion and follow the steps so you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you just go too fast, you're going to skip over and miss a ton of really small, important details, and you won't be doing it properly. You're going to try to make it look flashy, and it's just going to turn into a bunch of crap. So I tell my students all the time, you've got to do it slow. When you look at the stanzas where it's person on person, they're scripted. So it's like this person does A, then I respond with B, and then they do C, and then we go to D. It's kind of this 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of steps, if you will. But they're scripted on purpose because you're starting to understand counter to counter, attacker role versus defender role. How does a defender, counter in a specific attack? And then what happens when you counter it? Does the attacker counter with something else? So there's this interesting interplay that you've got to understand between both people. They both, if you think of it, let me put it a different way. If you think of it in terms of two people are trying to hurt one another, whatever the reason is, they're both jockeying for position. They're both jockeying for advantage. So both people have a say in the outcome. So if you're not training that way and understanding, okay, if you do X and I do Y, then you do Z, then I do A, then blah, 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 back and forth, you're really not going to understand the dynamics of what an altercation would actually look like. And you can't learn it when you do it fast. So you got to do it slow. And then the other thing that's fun is you got to drill and do eventually, once you understand strike one, then strike two, then strike three, then strike four in order, then you start to mix and match because now what you've done is you've built all these tools in your toolbox, kind of singular. You're learning it 1, 2, 3, and then you start to get to a point where you understand them well enough that you can speed up a little bit. And you can also start to get rid of the script because now once you understand the tools well enough, you can start to mix and match in the moment. And that's where it starts to become alive. So don't try to rush to get to the free training. Other arts, you'll hear the term randori, whatever, but just don't be in a rush to get there. You'll get there, trust me, but you're going to get there properly by doing slow, taking your time, learning it, do the script, understand the interplay between both partners that are in the stanzas, and then eventually you can start to mix and match, speed it up, do it free, and be responsive. Sooner or later, you'll get to a point where it becomes second nature, and you no longer have to think about a reaction or a footwork or an angle because it'll be so buried in your body that you'll just automatically do it. You'll start to get this muscle memory, but this is the process to go through to get that muscle memory. And honestly, this applies to anything you might do from a physical perspective, even if it's other martial arts. You should be following this kind of way to learn or how to learn. You're going to be a better student and a better martial artist as a result. All right. So look, guys, That is what I had for you this evening. So look, I appreciate the time. You are always welcome to reach out to myself, my senior instructors through any of the channels, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. My cell phone is what's published. You can text me, you can call me. More than happy to have conversations with you. Give us touch points along the way. Videotape yourself. It's not rank, not testing, but just video it, email it to us. I'll be happy to give you some feedback. Otherwise, I certainly look forward to seeing you at a future seminar, a future class. Certainly would love to be hosted, either myself or one of my instructors in your city and in your backyard. We can put together a fun seminar, have a rock and roll weekend, and just have a lot of fun doing it. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much, and everybody have a great night. We'll talk to you soon.